Good afternoon, everybody. This is a little series called Study with God with Joe. And today, we're going to talk about how God uses us as an instrument for doing good, not bad. Let's jump into the Word. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 11 through 15, it says like this: You used to be honored with the music of harps, but now here you are in the world of the dead. You lie on a bed of many goats and are covered with a blanket of worms. King of Babylon, born morning star, you have fallen from heaven. In the past you conquered the nation, but now you have been thrown to the ground. You were demanding to climb up to heaven and to place your throne above the highest star. You thought you could sit like a king on the mountain in the north, where the gods assemble. You said you could climb to the top of the clouds and be like the mighty, but instead you have been brought down to the deepest part of the world of the dead. Now, this is the story about Lucifer and about his instrument. There's three dark angels: Lucifer, Michael, and Gabriel. Gabriel is worship. Michael is the word. Lucifer is the song leader. And now he's telling God that he's going to go higher than he is, that he's going to take control of heaven. So God says, no, you are lying to the people, you're lying to me, you're lying to everybody in heaven, but I'm going to throw you down to the pits of hell. That's what he's saying now. God says, now I cast you out of heaven, you're not allowed to come back in here. So he said, I give you earth and see what you're going to do on earth. See, that's how sin came. If you read Genesis chapter 3, what happened? The serpent was in the Garden of Eden and made Eve ate from the fruit tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Sometimes God uses us as an instrument of songs, worship, speaking of the word, teaching of the word. That are instruments that God uses us for to teach other people what it's all about. Look at Matthew chapter 4. Matthew chapter 4, in verse 8 and 9. How Satan tried to convince Jesus about it. And in verse 8, it goes like this: Then the devil took Jesus to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdom of the world in all their generation, kindness. All this I will give you, the devil said, if you kneel down and worship me. See, that's the problem with the sinners. They want to worship after worship after worship. And this is the stuff that God says no. God says no. Jesus says no. If you go further down in the book of Matthew, where he says, a man cannot eat a bread alone, or besides the word alone. See, Jesus said, why would you give me something when I already own it? He said, I'm not bowing it down to you. I'm not going to worship you. Because why? If you read Isaiah chapter 14, verse 11, Lucifer was the leader of songs. He was an instrument of God's hope. He was an instrument to lead the songs. But since he got so selfish, when he got so selfish of getting an instrument, he wanted to take a part of peace, meaning training. He wanted to steal some power from God to say, this is my kingdom. He wanted to go above God's head, try to take control. And you can't do that because God knows when you can't do things on your own. So that's why God cast Lucifer down. And that's how sin became. And that's why Jesus wasn't tempted when the devil tried to convince him to take. He said, if you bow down to me, you're near to me, I'll give you everything. No. You see, Satan tricks people of saying they're going to give them what they want and when they want it. And that's why Jesus died on the cross for us. He died and cleaned us from sin. And that's why we have to look for. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 11 through 16 says, Then the Lord spoke to me again. Mortal man, he said, grieve for the fate that is waiting for the king of Tyre. Tell him what I, the servant, the Lord, am saying. You were once an ensemble of perfection. How wise and handsome you were. You lived in Eden, in the garden of God, and were one groom of very kind rubber and diamonds, Tabapel and Carnel, and Jasper, and Sparrow, and Emerald, and Jet. You had a ornament of gold that were made for you. On that day you were created. I put a terrifying angel there on the ground. You will live on my holy mountain and walk among speaking garment. Your condition was perfect from the day you were created until you began to do evil. You were busted, buying and selling, and this lead you to violence and sin. So I force you to leave my holy mountain, and the angel who guard you drove you away from the sparkling gems. That's up. Sorry about that, guys. Have a little cold. So Ezekiel is talking about Lucifer. He said, remember back in Genesis, you was in the Garden of Eden. God cast you out because you try to steal power. You try to steal and sell gold, merger, gems. And the only thing you bring is sinfulness, violence, dishonest, disrespect. Everything you need to do that you couldn't do it. Sorry, guys. In Daniel chapter 10, in the book of Daniel, in chapter 10, verse 13 to 20, and this is the thing I love about Daniel. Because remember, Daniel was the one that God gave provision about sin. And provision how to provide. And King Nebuchadnezzar, he couldn't do it. And look at what he says. Daniel chapter 10, verse 13 to 20 says, the angel, the prince of the kingdom of Persia, optioned me for 21 days. That Michael, one of the chief angels, came to help me because I had been left there alone in Persia. I have come to make you understand what will happen to your people in the future. This is a vision about the future. When he said this, I stopped at the ground, speechless. Then the angel who looks like a man reached out and touched my lips. I said to him, Sir, this vision makes me so weak that I cannot stop trembling. I am like a slave standing before his master. How can I talk to you? I have no strength or breath left in me. Once more he took hold of me, and I felt strong. He said, God loves you, so don't let anything worry you or frighten you. When he had said this, I felt very strong and said, Sir, tell me what you have to say. You have made me feel better. He said, do you know why I came to you? It is to reveal to you what is written in the book of the truth. Now I have to go back and fight the guardian of the angel of Persia. After what the guardian of angel of Greece will appear, there is no one to help me except Michael, Israel the guardian, the angel he is responsible for helping me defeat me, and what I am not going to tell you is true. Come on, man. Daniel is talking about, this is the stuff that Daniel was talking about. Daniel said this is the instrument. God gave an instrument to Daniel, telling him what was going to happen in the future. Nobody will know what happens in the future. He's talking about Lucifer. He says Lucifer is the one that's going to create chaos. So Michael is down. He's giving the word to Michael is giving a word to Daniel. He says, I know what you're going through. I know how you feel. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. Don't be nothing. You're doing God's will. Because he is an instrument of dreams. It's the provision that God gives us. It's the song that God gives us. It's the worship that God gives us. It's the word that God gives us. God gives us the blessing and the mercy. Because he said when Jesus Christ comes, he is the young lamb. He's going to be slaughtered. He's going to take away our sin. Why? Because that was the future. Don't let the devil tell you different ways. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 8. He says, while David and all the people danced with all their might to honor God, they sang and played musical instruments, harp, drums, cymbals, and trumpets. Look at that. Even Daniel was celebrating with God. You can't get better than that. That's something beautiful, amazing. Why? Because God said we are his people and he's our God. That's what he's saying. Because he said he gave Lucifer so many chances. So he gave them so many chances to change their ways. Remember in Jeremiah how God says in Jeremiah, he said, when you was in your mother's womb, I'm going to use you as an instrument, as a poet. You're going to write poetry. You're going to write the things that needs to be said in love and kindness. 2 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 13 and 14. It says like this. It says in verse 13, it goes like this. It says like this. All the priests present, regardless of the group to which they belong, heard, conscience themselves, and all the living musicals and harmonies, and the members of their clan were wearing line clothed in the levants, stood near the east side of the altar with cymbals and harps, and with them were 120 priests playing trumpets, and the songs were acceptable in perfection and harmony by trumpets and cymbals and the other instruments. They praised the Lord, praising the Lord because he is good and he loves his love is eternal. Look at that. Even everybody got involved. Everybody. That's something special. That God gives us. That's something magical that God gives us. God gives us an instrument to worship him, to love him, to respect him, and to honor him. That's what he wants. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, he says like this. It says, the earth was formless and desolate. The rugging ocean that covers everything was enclosed in total darkness, and the power of God was moved over the water. So it says, God says on earth was without void. So he said Lucifer came, and three things in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, he says it was void, meaning that was, it says it was void. It was void. And the three things was, it was chaos, emptiness, and darkness. If you read, like I said, if you read Isaiah chapter 14, verse 11 through 15, you read Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, that's what Lucifer brings. But I'm telling you, God used us as an instrument to worship, to sing, to preach and teach the word. That's our instrument. Another instrument is to write poems, to become writers about what kind of job that God does for us. And yes, and this is the most amazing thing that God does for us. This is Study God with Joe. Godspeed. See you next week.